This is the story of how I farm 100,000 potatoes in 7 Days to Die. Now, 7 Days to Die is a zombie apocalypse game where every 7 days a blood moon rise, and a massive horde of zombies swarms you constantly until the end of the night. But 7DD does not have any way to automate anything, so I would have to find the most efficient way to get to 100,000 potatoes while surviving the apocalypse. And it all started like any 7DD playthrough, naked in the middle of nowhere. I swiftly did the tutorial, looted the first useless house, and I got to my first trader, which was wrecked. I looted and sold his own shit, and then I found the perfect flat spot for the farm.
That's the perfect spot, right next to a wreck. It's all flat.
Then I proceeded to make some basic chests to store all my stuff, and then I went to loot the town next to me, and this is where I found my first potatoes. Then I immediately found a hunting knife, which was exactly what I wanted because I was going for a knife build. Then I looted Dick's Diner, and I made my first farm plot before the end of the first day. I was very happy with what I did with the first day, and I went on the second day with more confidence that this challenge could be doable. On day 2, while waiting for the day, I stabbed some flour for some easy money, XP, and cloth. Then I looted some building for a bit, and I heard my first drop. I went to collect it, and it had southern farming in it. I bought some potatoes to make seeds, but then I realized that you need southern farming 20 to make some seed. But I also found some potato seeds in a bin. I got enough level to finish Living of the Land.
Alright, Living of the Land is done.
And the reason you need Living of the Land is because without a point, you only collect around 2 potatoes per plot and 50% chance to get a seed. But when maxed out, it triples the harvest, but not the seed. Then I planted my first potato.
Alright, the first potatoes are now planted. Oh shit!
On day 3, I tried to loot a bit more of the town in hope to find more southern farming. I got infected and almost died to a dog, and this is where I'm gonna tell you about my other goal. I don't want to die in this challenge. It is not the main challenge, but I'm gonna try my best to not die at all. So I had to go in the field to hit some trees to get some honey, to cure my infection. Then I made my first dew collector, I sold enough stuff to buy a wrench, I got 2 more southern farming, and with the wrench I gathered enough material to craft a workbench. On day 4, the first half was pretty uneventful, just some looting here and there, and again stabbing some flowers to sell to the second wreck I found. But then, in a random car, I found my first ever pistol. And just after that, when I came home, I harvested my first farmed potatoes.
Alright, here it is. The first potatoes. Bam. 7 per hit. 7, 7. That one wasn't ready. Damn it.
And this is why I chose the knife as my primary build, because the knife is the fastest melee item in the game, and with all the attack speed upgrade and a good knife, I'm gonna be able to harvest hundreds upon hundreds of potato plants. And then I realized I had enough material to craft a full level 1 assassin armor. On day 5, I got the closest to death yet against a biker and a horde of zombie. It was a really close call, but I managed to run away and shoot them with my bow and my gun. Then I collected again flowers for money, and I started prepping the horde base during the night. On day 6, I continued to prepare the horde base, and the reason I chose the Dick's Diner is because the outer layer is made out of concrete, making that a solid foundation against a horde knight. All I needed to do is to get some chokes with some hatch to stop the zombies. Then I found all my last southern farming in a midway clinic, and a random warehouse with no skull.
Oh! I can make potatoes now.
But then at night, out of nowhere, I got jumped by 2 feral on day 6. Out of stamina, I tried to fight them, but I was no match for them, and then I died. I may have died, but it was just a secondary objective. I will not let this bring me down, so I went back, grabbed my stuff, and continued the challenge. I decided to complete my first quest to the trader, but did not realize that my second quest was at my horde base, so I had to abandon this quest or else everything I did for the horde base would have reset. So I got a new quest that was way further away and got back just in time for the blood moon. Now the blood moon was surprisingly easy. I haven't talked about the difficulty I play on. I play on survivalist, which is the second hardest difficulty in 7 Days to Die. And this blood moon was cleared by 2 AM. I rarely see a blood moon being cleared without any more zombies spawning. Usually they spawn until the end of the night. Day 8 was pretty uneventful. The only thing I did was doing quest for my bicycle.
Great, here you go. Don't spend it all in one place. If you want a job from me, you do what you're told, lass. It's a deal.
I also got to harvest a good bunch of my potato. On day 9, I kept doing quests, but I finally made a full set of iron tool and I finally found the real pistol in the other town. On day 10, I also did a bunch of quests.
Well, look here. At least wipe that shit off your boot. Congratulations. Here's your reward.
But I got stuck in a tree-skull passing gas with the main loot at night, so I had to act quick. And even with the nightfall, I managed to clear all the zombies and secure the loot. On day 11, I crafted a pistol level 5, and now my only focus was to get as much crafting book as I can. Because with better gear, I get better loot, and then I can craft more farm plot out of rotten flesh, clay, nitrate, and wood. I also completed all the quests that I needed to get the bicycle, but I only needed 5 more books to craft the mini bike. So I took the crafting book bundle, and maybe that was a mistake. On day 12, I went to see Trader Jen in the Burnland to see what she sell. Nothing great, but a few books and a tarp for my dew collector. I came home and I really started to plant mostly potatoes as I was using the plot to farm other crops for my challenge, and then I expanded the farm. And this is where I started to really regret my choice of not taking the bike, because I was not finding any vehicle magazine. So I decided to put a point in the Grease Monkey and hope to get more vehicle books. On day 13, it was time to harvest some potatoes, and this is where I realized that I'm not getting 1 seed per crop. I'm gonna have to use potatoes to craft more seeds because it is 50% chance to get a seed, but I didn't know that until now. But I also learned that the farmer armor will help me towards my goal. The boots will give you more chance to get a seed, and the outfit will help you get more crops. Putting a point in Grease Monkey was definitely the good choice, as I got all my books and I finally crafted the mini bike. On day 14, I had enough armor pieces to upgrade all of my armor to tier 4. Because upgrading the tier not only upgraded the armor points, it also increased the effect of each armor, which means more crops and more seeds for the farmer outfit, but also for the nerd outfit. Because the nerd outfit is one of the most overpowered armor in the game. When you wear the outfit, there's a chance that when you read a magazine, you get an extra point in that crafting skill, which at level 4 is a 20% chance to get an extra skill. Apparently, the plants grow based on light levels, so I tried to add some light to the farm so we can work at night. Ultimately, it didn't work cause it only works with sunlight. Then the blood moon came, and it went really well. The zombies were all still low level and I could just stab them through the window or shoot them if they cluster too much. But my entrance were a bit too solid compared to my inner walls, so they tried to demolish the wall instead of going through my killing spot. There was a few dogs, so I did my best to collect the rotten flesh out of them, and I got around 44 rotten flesh in this blood moon. On day 15, I looted the animal hoarder because I knew there was gonna be some dogs with some rotten flesh. And then, I decided it was time to kick up the difficulty a notch, and I went to loot a POI tier 4. I had to be really careful because there was some really strong zombie in this place. The loot was okay. I got a few potato seed, some steels, some legendary parts, and a few pistol parts. But the difficulty really went up when I went into the pool side of the inn. And this is where I encountered my first mutant and my first white. But they were too fucking stupid to get out of the pool, so I just shot them to death. Then it became night, and I almost died to a biker once again. I swear these guys are way too strong for their own good. Badly injured with a sprained leg, I decided to wait out the night and the debuff inside the vent. On day 16, when my wound finished healing, I finished looting the tier 4 building, while almost dying again. I grabbed the main loot, which was pretty underwhelming, and then I went back home. And this is where I got the idea to make an easy way to the main loot to every house inside my town. Because every time the loot respawned, I could just walk to it, open the chest and get out. I also marked the kitchen, because this is where I can find rotten flesh inside the cupboard. On day 17, I continued looting basic houses in hope to find more book and more rotten flesh to make more farm plot, while also marking the loot with some pink paint. And back home, the potato farm started to look more like a farm and not just some random plots in the middle of nowhere. On day 18, I went to do a quest in the crypt, and this is where I realized every coffin in the grave have rotten flesh in them or bones. So I collected everything, started a quest which restarted the whole crypt, and collected everything again. And with that new rotten flesh, I was able to expand the farm a bit more, then I collected and planted more potatoes. I also upgraded my knife to a machete, but I somehow don't have this recording. On day 19, I decided it was time to do the shooting range in my town. And I decided to do it out of order. Because in 7 Days to Die, the devs want you to do the POI in a certain order. They're gonna put lights and some doors will be unlocked so you can fall in their dummy trap and experience the POI normally. But when you know the POI and you know which wall to demolish, you can go out of order and go straight for the main loot. A tier 4 POI should be hard, but the machete was way stronger than I expected, and I just slaughtered the whole thing easily. It was almost one shot, one kill. The loot of the area was pretty okay. It was mostly weapons that I won't use, but it had some parts and bullets that I needed. With that going this well, I decided to do another 4 skull location, the NCD checkpoint 4. It was as smooth as the shooting range. The only scary part was the feral soldier. On day 20, I noticed that Jen now sells a crucible, but this thing is 15,000 dukes, so I needed some cash to buy it. So I went and destroyed cars in the Burnland to sell the parts, but it was not fast enough, so I went back home to make a ranger hat for more barter, and I harvested my first 1,000 potatoes. Then I took some time to look online for the best way to make dukes and found out that mini-buy handlebar are worth a lot of money, so I made 18 of them. On day 21, after replanting all my potatoes, I drank Grandpa's awesome sauce. Why is it called like that? I put a point in barter and equipped the ranger hat that I just crafted. I sold the mini-bike handlebar for 7k and finally bought the crucible to make steel. And now with the new steel from the crucible, I made a magnum tier 6. And then I fortified the base for the horde with some concrete. The blood moon was again very easy and I felt overpowered with the new machete. The only time I got injured was because I went outside to get the rotting flesh out of the dog. And with this blood moon, I got a good 140 rotting flesh. This is 28 new plot for the farm. By the end of the day, I crafted a tier 6 farmer outfit for the yield of my crops and the seed that I get, and then I headed to the burnland to find some bigger structure to loot. At day 23, I encountered a dire wolf. I thought I could kill it. Bad mistake.
Wow.
And after getting back my stuff, I looted a supermarket, a passing gas, and the bear's den with 2 undead bears for a ton of rotten flesh. These guys give an insane 50 rotting flesh. Then I quickly took the main loot from a motel, and then I went back home. And at home, I got my first big harvest with more than 1,000 potatoes for this harvest only. But I made 30 new plot with the rotten flesh from the bears, so I had to use a bunch of seeds, so it didn't look that much in the chest. I was finally able to do a chemistry station, but then realized that I don't have a beaker. It's day 23 and I still haven't found any beaker. And then I finally made a motorcycle, and this will speed up everything I do. So on day 24, I grabbed my new motorcycle and my new wrench that I just did and went back to the burnland to try the 4.5 skull POI. This was surprisingly easy, and the last door bugged out and it didn't open, which protected me from my first irradiated zombie. On day 25, I finally found a beaker in my nearest clinic. With that beaker, I made my chemistry station. So I went to my nearest silo to collect some oil shell to transform it into gas because I was actually running low on gas. Then, knowing that the mobs has respawned in the building near me, I decided to go see the animal hoarder for the dogs and the rotten flesh. But this time, there was a dire wolf and not just some wolves. But I had learned from my mistake, and this time, instead of just standing still and shooting it, I used my bike to do some hit and run until it was dead. But my god, these guys are tanky. At the end of the day, I had another harvest and replanting of my potatoes, and this was starting to take some time. The whole collecting and replanting took 5 minutes. And I was already thinking it was gonna take some time, but I was not ready for how long it's gonna take near the end. On day 26, I sort of entered a gameplay loop of looting for rotten flesh, making plots, and farm potatoes. But I was still looking for some things like motor tool parts, and at the end of the day, the airdrop had a nail gun tier 5, which was a great find since I had no motor tool parts. On day 27, I finally found some motor tool parts in an estate. I then looted a bunker that had a few too many irradiated zombies. On day 28, the day of the blood moon, I've let all of my potatoes grow up another day so I can make a massive harvest because they were getting a bit too out of sync with each other. Then I upgraded my assassin armor to level 6, and this blood moon was a bit more stressful. I had to keep slicing or else I was gonna be overwhelmed. There were no radiated zombie, but I got a dire wolf for a bit more rotten flesh. On day 29, I made 33 more farm plot with all the rotten flesh I got from the horde. I also upgraded my machete to tier 6 and my pickaxe to tier 6. I was really feeling that I was getting to the late game of 7 Days to Die. Almost all of my gear was maxed out. On day 30, it was time for another huge harvest, but it was less than I thought it would be. This was going to take a while. After the harvest, I went to look for another biome, hopefully finding the desert, but instead I found the wasteland, with in the distance the skyline of a massive city. I knew this is where I will go for my late game POI. But finding the wasteland was also great because of all the vulture and the dog spawning everywhere. This was the perfect place to farm for rotten flesh. On day 31, I went again on an exploration to find a desert biome. I really needed sand and oil shale, and on the eastern side of the map, I finally got to the desert. I mined a ton of oil shale and sand, and then I went to the nearest town, discovered the trader Bob, and looted a cracked book. On day 32, I started off the day by crafting the 2 best gun I could, the SMG and the Vulture. I got another big harvest at the end of the day, and it's taking longer and longer to plant them. And with a harvest every 2 days, I needed way more platform to make this possible. So, in the night of day 33, I went back to the wasteland to get as much rotting flesh as I could. I tried to fight a few dire wolves and bears, but I was underprepared in medical supplies, so I went back home and returned with more stuff. Back in the wasteland, I speed looted a bunch of buildings, I killed a bunch of irradiated zombies and noticed that there were no undead bears and no dire wolf, because they only spawn at night, so I just kept looting stuff here and there, and the loot was way better in the wasteland. I was wasting my time in the other biome. Hunting undead bears and dire wolves was very risky, but on the dawn of day 34, I had got 408 rotting flesh. This was definitely the way. With this, I crafted a whopping 81 plot. So right before the night, I decided to go back in the wasteland again. On day 35, I realized that not only do I get a fuck ton of rotting flesh, the loot from those guys is insane. I'm gaining bullets by dumping bullets in their brain. And after a few kills, I developed the perfect method for them to just arrive and die, dropping their loot and their flesh right in front of me. I would empty half my clip of my SMG in their head while they're coming, then I can swap for the Vulture, and I usually shoot 4 or 5 bullets in their head, and most of the time, they would just die at my feet. I also got enough motor tool parts to make an impact driver tier 6, then it was time for another potato harvest, and I finally reached 10,000 potatoes, which means only 90 more to go. And for this blood moon, cause it's blood moon night, I had such a massive boost in power that it was like a walk in the park. On day 36, I got enough crafting magazine and steel to craft a 4x4 truck right before the end of the day to go back to the wasteland once again and keep farming rotten flesh, because I really needed to expand the farm. At the rate I was collecting potato, if I don't keep expanding the farm, this will take another 70 days to collect the 100,000 potato, so I needed to kick my gears in fourth and farm that flesh. I also unlocked the rat remover mod, so I made one, and arriving in the wasteland, I finally decided to put a point in Huntsman. Everywhere on the wiki or on Reddit, people said that the skill was only for living animals. Maybe something changed in the recent update, but I was getting more rotten flesh per kill, and this was huge. Now I just needed to forget an elixir to respec some of my point that I didn't need. On day 37, I realized how massive this wasteland city was. This was probably the biggest city I've seen in 7 Days to Die. Returning home, I got a massive 500 rotting flesh and made 100 new farm plot. Then I harvested all the ready potatoes and I kept a few farm plot to make a side farm for some vegetables that it was lacking and my newly found super corn. The truck was great for transporting stuff, but it was drinking fuel like a Brit drinks beers, so I made a fuel saver mod, then returned to the wasteland for the night. And now with 3 points in Huntsman, I was collecting 80 rotting flesh per bear. And at the dawn of day 38, I brought back almost 1,000 rotting flesh. But now I'm lacking of other materials. So first I went to the desert to get more oil shale, then I mined some iron and clay, and even with this trip, I managed to get back to the wasteland before midnight. On day 39, I sold all my shit that I don't need and bought a forget elixir to reset my skill and remove some of the skill that I was not using anymore. But instead of going to the wasteland, I had harvest ready at night. I also tried to auger the harvest, and it's way faster than the knife with the right technique. But a wrong move and it digs right through your farm plot. On day 40, I made a chainsaw and hoped that it would also harvest and not damage the plot too much, and after testing it, it worked perfectly. It was almost 3 times faster than the knife. So my only bottleneck was planting the potatoes. Then I went to the wasteland early and found a drone in the main loot of the high school.
All systems go. How may I help?
On day 41, I came back with another 1,000 rotting flesh, making another 200 plot. This was a lot of work, but I could finally see some good progress. The rest of day 41 was uneventful: mine clay, place the plot, go back and kill bears and wolf. On day 42, when I came back home, I made another 190 plot, and then I harvested my biggest harvest yet. A whopping 5,618 potatoes. It took me a while to get the perfect technique with the chainsaw, but once I mastered it, it was so much faster than the knife. It was just extremely loud, and it felt like I was playing Guitar Hero, but with only one note. And once again, I was way too over-prepared for the Blood Moon. All my structure was made out of steel, and I had like 3 backup plans if my trapdoor breaks. But it just never happened, as I was way too strong. Day 43 and 44 were almost exactly the same. Killing stuff in the wasteland at night, gathering resources during the day, harvesting the potatoes. On day 45, I was extremely lucky and got a massive 1,600 rotting flesh. Now, from day 46 to 48, the gameplay was always the same. Wasteland, make plot, harvest, mine clay, nitrate. But I was getting around 10,000 potatoes per 2 days, which was good, but not enough. Then day 49 and the Blood Moon came. And I was really prepared, but a bit more nervous because my screamer were now irradiated. And in my other playthrough, mostly meant that I will get Demolisher that night. So I planted my potatoes and waited for the horde. And I was completely wrong. There were no Demolisher and not a single irradiated zombie. The best I got was a couple of white. So on the morning of day 50, I returned to the wasteland early because I had nothing better to do, and I saw an undead bear. So it must just be a night bear that didn't despawn that I missed, but soon after I saw another one. That probably meant that my game stage was high enough to have undead bears during the day. But after going through the whole town a day, I haven't seen any bears. Maybe they were left over from the last night after all. So since the last 10 days, things were growing really fast, and on day 51, I finally reached halfway of my potato goal. And what I did is upgrade my storage to steel because each box is 10,000 potatoes. And I even got to 60k with that harvest. And if everything goes well, I would finish before the next blood moon. On day 52, nothing really happened, but the harvest of day 53 took so long that it bleeded out into day 54. And this was the penultimate harvest. And I even discovered a fastest way to harvest the potato. I could run in diagonal with a precise angle and get half of a row before it get out of sync. Ultimately, I got 84,000 potatoes. This took about 45 minutes, which means that the next harvest was gonna be the last. And I didn't even need to craft seed this time, as what I got from the potatoes was enough. And it would be the last time that I would plant a potato for this challenge. On day 56, something was wrong. The crops were growing slower than usual. They were supposed to be ready at around 2 PM, and normally the crops were updating at the rate the player plants them. But since the last two harvests, they were maturing all at the same time. Because I think the field was getting so big that the game was having a hard time to calculate the plants growing. I don't think you're supposed to do that in 7 Days to Die. You're not supposed to have 3,000 plot laid out like this with plants growing on them. So since they didn't mature in time, we've got a final blood moon. This challenge was starting to be a bit draining mentally, but not to the point of exhaustion. I would have taken that more slowly if it was not for 2.0 around the corner. And on day 57, right after the blood moon, I harvested my 100,000th potato. This was a journey. Did it look like a waste of time? Maybe. And I would not start again on another crop, since all the crops are the same in 7 Days to Die. But this was for me a test of resolve and determination to attain a goal that seems unreasonable, but with clever thinking and some brute force here and there, was attainable. And this was mostly a good test and practice at these kinds of giant videos that span over multiple days. My biggest YouTube channel is a Minecraft channel, and I've never took the chance to make those kind of videos because I was scared of the size of the project. But with a challenge like this on a channel without big expectation, I could let my creativity and fun flow into this. So I will say thank you for watching, please subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and on to the next one.